What a wonderful nap! I wonder how long it's been since I fell asleep in my nice, comfortable bed with fluffy blankets and cold pillows. Oh my god. Hi again, guys, and I realized that it's been a hot second since I've made a video. Between me getting a new job and completely forgetting I have a YouTube channel, I decided that it was time for me to do one of my 2 yearly uploads. It's been over half a year since I did my last Rivals video, with that being the Season 1 and 1.5 overview. I have been addicted to this game like a homeless man is to heroin. It's actually bad, the amount of time that I spent on this game. I don't even have a good explanation for it. I just don't want to play Valorant all the time anymore, and this game seemed like a great alternative. Combine that with the fact that we're getting absolutely amazing characters and new content basically every week, whether that be skins, maps, or anything else, we're always being fed something which really keeps me engaged. It's very easy to entertain me if you couldn't tell. However, if you know anything about me, you know that I like to complain. I usually give my takes on things, talking about certain aspects that I thought were interesting before giving my honest opinion on it, and then at the end giving a section on my likes and dislikes so that way you could tell what I found to be good and bad about a given subject. It's a nice way for me to get information across while also giving my own opinion, which is the whole premise of this channel. I like talking about how I feel. But today, I've decided I'm going to take you on a bit of a different journey. Since Season 1.5, I've had a lot of different opinions on the game, ranging from good to bad. And while I could go out of my way to dick ride Rivals and Guang, I've decided I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to take up all of that pent-up rage and anger I have had and put it into one comprehensive video that I could put out there and probably never touch upon again. After all, I am the master at totally forgetting to do stuff. But this video is important to me because I think that I don't just speak for myself, and I think that I have a lot of good ideas and complaints that should be taken seriously, no matter how awful I sound bitching about it or what attempt at humor I try to infuse into the script. And yes, I have a script. There's no way in hell I'm going to be able to spitball this out of my coochie. I'll probably make a video about Rogue and Gamelit later, but I want to stick this out of the way first. And also, if I sound sick, my nose has been perpetually stuffy, and I cannot unclog it no matter what I do. Let me know in the comments if Claritin actually works, or if I'm going to be wasting my money. This does also mean I'm not doing a lot of takes, so you're going to have to deal with the mistakes I make. If you all fuck with my white boy flow, there will be a card at the end of this video that will probably take you to one just like it. But until then, grab a drink, grab some grub, and let's get to it. I think this topic has probably been spoken about for most out of all of the ones in my video, but I wanted to touch upon it anyways. When the game first came out to the public with Season 0, the game released with a grand total of 33 characters. Of those 33 characters, we had a grand total of 8 Vanguards, 7 Strategists, and 18 Duelists. Fast forward to Season 5.5, where we have a grand total of 11 Vanguards, 10 Strategists, and 23 Duelists. With the last 10 heroes that were released, we've gotten 3 Vanguards, 3 Strategists, and 5 Duelists. If the math isn't mathing for you, I got you here. The game already started with the Duelist role having over double the amount of Vanguards and Strategists combined. The hopes that the tank and support players had as seasons went on were quickly diminished as the heroes released started falling more and more into the Duelist category instead of the ones they actually wanted. This ended up leading to a character deficit where tanks and support players were stuck playing the same characters every season while the Duelist got a brand new character. It felt as though those two roles were getting disregarded and the players were getting a little annoyed. Why did the Duelist get a brand new hero every season while the other two are fighting for the scraps? I'm just going to put this out there as simply as I can because I think this has already been spoken to death. Please, for the love of God, Rivals, just release less DPS as time goes on. Release more Strategists and more Vanguards so that we can have something to enjoy, and that way we don't have to watch as the Duelists get another treat. Every character in the Marvel Universe can fit into the Duelist role, so you really gotta put your heads together and think about how to not make them all Duelists. Thank you. If you need some inspiration, I'll give you a bunch. Carol Danvers, Tank. Wasp, Support. Angel, Support. Captain Britain, the Dude. Tank. Vision, Tank. Dazzler, Support. Juggernaut, Tank, Cosmo, Support. At this point, Nightcrawler and Cyclops are the only 2 characters I will accept as DPS in the near future. Maybe Kitty Pryde as well because I like her, and maybe Green Goblin, but only if his purpose is solely to counter Spider-Man. Wow, there you go. I may be cooking. Call me a shrimp the way I'm frying these hoes. I was actually pretty surprised with the release of Gambit with him being a strategist. And what I mean by pretty surprised is actually not at all because I fucking called it before the character even announced in the game. Slorpa the Schlomnipotent here. And come on, making Rogue a tank? Fork-founded kitchen. Need I say more? I think one of the really big red flags as of late is the fact that Deadpool and Elsa Bloodstone are coming to the game, which normally I wouldn't really care about since I have been a casual enjoyer of Elsa in the past. The issue lies in what that means. Now, although Deadpool hasn't been confirmed to be a duelist, the probability of that being the case is higher than the probability of him filling the other 2 roles, which means that we're probably back to getting more DPS than we know what to do with. I'm also surprised that they brought him out this early, since I was absolutely certain they were going to wait until the game started dying to drop Deadpool to bring players back with the Merc. I think casual players don't know much about Elsa Bloodstone, which is to be expected. But one of the things that is crazy is that I would think she would swing both ways as either a duelist or tank. When you take into consideration her Bloodstone choker, which gives her superhuman strength, agility, speed, and endurance, as well as a bit of regeneration, she could definitely become a tank. However, before she received it, she was a regular old monster hunter. And when I was observing the Season 6 trailer, I did in fact see that red gem barely peeking out. But with what we've seen with her mid-range rifle and coach gun, I could see her being a duelist, probably making her an Ashe equivalent. I know we all think that Deadpool is going to be a duelist, if not have his own versatile role, but I feel like if Elsa is also a duelist, we've gotten 2 more to add to that tally, bringing our duelist tally up to 25. And what sucks is that these 2 characters fit as duelists so well that I'm not even mad it's their classification. It's just the fact that we got 1 tank and 1 support to play with, and now we're getting more DPS. I feel like I've made my point easy to understand. I know that the DPS players are probably the majority of the player base, but I also think that it's really hard for the people who only play one specific role, or even us flex players, to enjoy these nice things because there's only so many characters we can try. The game at hype died down really quickly. I think I stopped seeing instalocks about 6 to 8 hours after he came out once people realized they actually had to heal. There were a few here and there, but I was able to grind out his Lord and Quick Play in about, let's say, 2 days or 13 hours of casual playing. Rogue was kinda similar, once people realized they had to tank and couldn't DPS. I'm not the greatest tank, but I have filled in the past, and I've been learning Emma on the side when she isn't banned in competitive, so it was really nice to be able to get back into the swing of things. But at the same time, her hype died down after 2 or 3 days, just because people realized they had to frontline and couldn't go around killing everybody. Pair that with her very high skill floor, and she was difficult and frustrating, even though I had a very nice day 1 of practically back-to-back MVPs. All I'm really saying is that I think adding more diversity to your characters is imperative, even with keeping the other roles engaged with playing the game. If tanks and supports feel like they're not getting any new toys to play with, they're not going to want to play the game. DPS have been getting these new shiny characters, and what they do instead of make it up to the other roles is giving tiny buffs that aren't needed and making Sue an instant ban in competitive or an instant lock if not. We really just need to start including characters in the other roles, since everything defaults back to DPS in the end. We got to switch it up a little and give everyone what they want. With the introduction of Season 5.5, a few competitive changes went out that I kind of enjoyed, especially in comparison to how past seasons worked. If you're unfamiliar with how the ranks work, I'll just explain it real quick. Basically, there are 9 different ranks in the game. Starting from the lowest to highest, you have Bronze, Silver, Gold, Platinum, Diamond, Grandmaster, Celestial, Eternity, and One Above All. From these ranks, Bronze to Celestial, each rank has 3 divisions, going from lowest to highest. When you get to Eternity and One Above All, there are no more divisions. Instead, these are untiered ranks where you accumulate RP to grind towards One Above All, making players compete for RP to make it into the top 500. The rank reset used to be absolutely horrendous. Before Season 5, at the start of Season 2, after you would grind through the ranks, you would be displaced 9 divisions from where you ended the previous season. For example, between Seasons 2 and 3.5, if you ended Season 1.5 at Diamond 1, you would start the next season at Silver 1. A lot of people complained about that half the time, and the devs took that into consideration and changed it when Season 4 dropped, reducing it to 7 divisions. For example, if you ended Season 3.5 at Diamond 1, you would drop to Gold 2 for Season 4. Players responded well to that change since it meant that they didn't have to grind as hard, especially those who had jobs or other obligations. Come Season 5, a big change was made where instead of it being a displacement, there's a new algorithm used where you do 10 different placement matches to determine what your rank for the season will be. It takes into consideration a bunch of different statistics, such as your peak from the previous season, the amount of wins and losses, and a few other things that determine where you end up. You could end up below or above your predicted rank, and you could do well enough in all 10 games, and could end up higher than your peak from the previous season. I don't actually know 100% how the system works, but I thoroughly enjoy it. Getting all that fun stuff out of the way, I want to talk about everything else about the rank system because I have a lot of issues with that. I want to start primarily with the overall system. The first thing I gotta say is that it's really easy to climb in this game, and it's also really easy to derank. For some reason, I think a lot of people have had the same situation where they have days of grand win streaks and days of unfathomable losses. They go on a long win streak and then a very long loss streak, and it doesn't really create an equal balance. I'm not sure why this happens, but it's almost as if the game realizes you're being successful and has to ego check you. I'm not saying that it's EOMM, but the patterns are really easy to see, and I know I'm not the only one who has had this happen to them. I want to know if there's a reason behind it and what the algorithm is to determine who you go up against in a rank, because sometimes this is ridiculous. Another issue I have is that the game classifies anybody who has not played ranked as Bronze 3 player. That really messes with the distribution, and that's why a lot of people who entered ranks like Gold or Plat were above 95% of other players. It takes into consideration the population of players who don't play ranked. I really feel like this makes certain ranks seem really good, like Grandmaster. I hit GM and I felt really good about it, and there's nothing wrong with feeling good about a rank you worked hard to get, but considering ranks like GM and Celestial are high ranks instead of the middle ground that it is, it's a product of the distribution system. I also really want to talk about the leaver penalty and compensation. Now luckily, if someone leaves early in the game before it starts within the first 70 seconds, the game ends. The leaver may or may not receive a penalty, while everyone else is unaffected and can queue up again. I don't have an issue with that. I actually really like that it cancels the game because of the unfair advantage that is a 5v6. It reminds me of the remake system in Valorant. The issue with Rivals is that if you have a leaver halfway through the game doesn't help you out. If someone leaves beyond that 70 seconds, then the game will continue and you have to play it out, still taking the loss of points, which is dependent on your rank, if you lose the game. The reason why you still lose points is because the system could easily be abused, and I understand. If this system wasn't in play, you could have teammates who leave to help their friends not lose any points, especially if the game was going to end in a loss anyways. I had this issue once, which doesn't relate to the specific point, where I went into a ranked game and got disconnected because my game crashed. I got back into the game, sweat my ass off, and won the game. And instead of me gaining anything, despite me being the best healer in the lobby with the most kills, least deaths, most assists, and most healing, I gained nothing because I left. It doesn't matter that I didn't choose the disconnect. My duo got 30 points and I couldn't even move in rank because my game crashed, and somehow that's my fault. There's also the case of people who go AFK and just mess around in the spawn room or just outside of it, making sure they stay in the game and active so they don't get booted, but also don't contribute to your team. There's only so many things that you can do about it, but because there aren't technically a leaver, the game decides that it's a fair fight, and you are going to lose just as much as you would a 5v6. The next ranked point that I want to talk about is the RP distribution. I'm actually kind of confused about how RP is distributed amongst players, because there are times where it does make sense and times where it doesn't. I don't know what stats and factors count towards the number, but I would really like that to be clarified so we all know what is counted. Does it count if I spend time on the objective? Is my healing or mitigation or damage stat as relevant as my KDA? Do final blows even matter? And how much players gain or lose, depending on what rank they are, is something that I understand, but I also think the numbers are a little wonky for. I was one division above my duo, and even if I had the better stat line, I wouldn't make 10 RP less than her on average, just because the game wanted to even out our ranks so we would at the same level. I didn't feel rewarded for doing good, and I felt as though she was getting rewarded for not doing as well as me. It doesn't matter that we were both in the same rank, the fact that I was one division higher was enough. I'm also really confused about how RP works with draws. Pulling from Valorant again, if you draw in the match, you typically don't lose any RR, but you do have the opportunity to gain some depending on your performance. The only time people have ever reported losing some were in excruciating conditions, such as Q dodging or leaving at some point. In Rivals, apparently, it is a thing that if you can lose RP on a draw. I didn't know that until it happened to me. I was playing Rocket Raccoon because for some reason that day I was just in the win condition for my duo, and She was on Sue, and as a Rocket player, I didn't have a very good KDA. I would say that I had 2 kills, not a lot of deaths, and no finals. The match ended in a tie, and somehow I lost 6 RP during that endeavor, despite me having just as much healing, if not more, than my duo. I personally think that if you end on a draw, you shouldn't be able to lose RP unless you do extremely bad. My stat line is probably average for a heal-bot Rocket, but because our team was taking so much damage, it was kind of what we needed at the time. I feel like I'm getting penalized for something that is kind of stupid. The final thing I want to bring up about is the ranked rewards. I actually really like that you get a multitude of different rewards depending on where you end in the season. I like that you get character skins, and I like that they are exclusive to the season. It makes you want to grind out ranked to get the skin, but I think that the skin being in gold is kind of weird. When I compared it to Overwatch, I think that the game did a really good job at incentivizing people to play their competitive mode because the rewards increased as they got higher in rank. If you take all of the players who don't play Rivals competitive out of the pool, gold is the average rank of all players, which means that the skin isn't really something that you feel accomplished for getting. I do actually like the nameplate frames, and I think that giving one is pretty plain and another rank up that's exciting is super nice, and helps give a little bit of flair to your banner. And I like the fact that you get plain boring one and the animated one. I do wish that everything was moved up one rank, however. So instead of the skin being at gold, it was at platinum. Instead of plat having the non-animated banner, it has the skin, and now diamond has the non-animated banner instead of the animated banner, and the animated banner goes to Grandmaster. And the crests start happening at Celestial. Whew, that one took me a hot second. I also think that, if I have to be entirely honest, outside of the banner frames, the rewards are kind of lackluster. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy that we get free skins of the rank, but I really wish that we got into more ranks like Celestial and Eternity. We got more than a stupid crest. I think it'd be really cool if maybe they gave you a tiny bit of currency, or maybe they did something else to show the work you put into getting the rank outside of a tiny crest in the corner of the banner that I barely even notice. But Honestly, my opinions on the ranked system are just kind of bogus. Just random filler here, I guess. When I initially came into this game, the big thing that sold me, outside of the many beloved characters, was the fact that the game had destructible terrain. If you don't know what that means, there are parts of the map that you can break to change the environment. This is something that I love, and I wanted this in Overwatch for years. There's nothing cool you can do with the maps or anything of the sort, and it made the environments feel stale and boring. But in Rivals, being able to change the maps by destroying terrain allows you to access different areas and change vantage points, which really can help spice things up in team fights and determine how they play out depending on what the terrain looks like. It can be used as a strategic advantage, or it can be used as something that's just really fun to do and looks super cool. However, with Season 1 and 1.5, the Fantastic Crew dropped alongside the 2 new maps, Empire of Eternal Night, Midtown, and Empire of Eternal Night, Celestial Park. There were a lot of things to like about these maps. Starting with the general visual appeal, it's absolutely atmospheric, dealing with the theme of Eternal Night and the vampire invasion. It all brings together familiar locations in the Marvel Universe, but twisted a little bit into a gothic, vampire-infested version of them. And with the darkness that surrounds the maps, it feels a little haunted. Spooky, even. We also get Herbie in the Midtown map, which is absolutely something I love. Put some respect on my Clanka's name. I do have to say that with these 2 maps, there is one singular thing that I absolutely hate and make the maps completely irredeemable. The reconstructing environment. Oh boy. With all the other games' maps, whenever you destroy part of it, after a certain amount of time, the pieces that were destroyed will vanish, and then the structures will rebuild themselves. It does take a while for that to happen, and unless you're playing the same map for a very long time, you might not actually see certain parts of the map rebuild. But it's something that happens, and you can easily re-break everything without much difficulty once it's back to normal. But with the Empire of Eternal Night maps, instead of the pieces you break fizzling out naturally appearing, these maps reconstruct themselves, taking the pieces that were destroyed and practically reversing time to put them back where they were. A cool concept in theory, but in execution, it's so ass. I've had many games absolutely ruined because of this terrain rebuilding itself. I will have a very good position against the enemy team, and all of a sudden the map rebuilds and traps me inside the structure, taking me out of the fight for an amount of time and ruining my position. I've had times where the reconstructing terrain has blocked my path and has gotten me killed. It's also visually distracting seeing half the stuff on your screen rebuild itself, and I have missed enemies that were behind the reconstruction because I couldn't see them from my position and their position behind the debris. Again, I think this was probably executed incorrectly, and if it was executed correctly, this could have been a really good design choice for the game. However, I just think that with all of these issues, it's more of a hassle than something that I'd rather enjoy. There's never really any benefits to it besides visual appeal, and even then it just gets boring to look at after a while. My next big complaint is about the symbiote maps, because I genuinely hate those with a burning passion. I don't know what it is about the maps, because when I try to think about them as maps, there's not actually a lot wrong with them. My big issue stems from the symbiote scump that appears to ruin your life. There are little patches of symbiote cum that you can hit, and what that does is it activates little pieces of the symbiote that shoot across the map, creating walls or bridges to help you access or block off certain points. While these are great for a single non-mobile character in the game, Adam Warlock, to access different areas of the map, it absolutely sucks to play into because, just like I mentioned in the previous complaint about the Season 1 maps, these things can block off your line of sight to enemies and allies alike, which limits your ability usage. While this can be a strategic advantage, especially if you position yourself in a place where you can actively use the wall to save you or your teammates' lives, it also just sucks because it's never the enemy making a smart play with them, but rather my own teammates shooting them and blocking my line of sight and making me reposition unnecessarily. I had a game where I played Phoenix, and I was about to pop the sickest ult of my life. I was actually so hyped for it, but then this ugly-ass Iron Man and his stupid man brain decided to go out of his way and accidentally shoot the bridge on the first stretch of the convoy map. And he completely blocked my ultimate and made me unable to secure any damage or kills with the ultimate that doesn't do anything anyways. If it wasn't useless before, this made it so unnecessary, and it aided the enemy, and it was my own Iron Man, dude. Fuck you, Iron Man players. Get a job. Fuck, man. I'm sorry. I get that that's part of what makes the map's interactable environment really cool, and I do see the creative vision that the devs had with this process. I think I'm at the point right now, though, where it's given me more issues than benefits, especially with the majority of characters having some sort of mobility. The difference, boost areas and bridges only really matter for characters who cannot make those jumps, but even then, there are ways to access those points for characters who lack vertical movement. And again, I genuinely think that's like only Adam Warlock, so I genuinely hate this stuff, and I really hope we don't get another symbiote map in the near future. Also, the aesthetic is just ugly because Clintar is just ugly, and it's gross and ugly as doo-doo poo-poo planet. I also want to talk about the Kunlun map that dropped with Season 4.5. The map is aesthetically beautiful, and I genuinely only have one really big complaint about it. While there are parts of the maps that have very bad choke points for attackers, the biggest difficulty comes from the initial choke point when trying to access the site. There is only one entryway that the devs divided into two by adding a singular pillar. It makes that first point extremely defender-sided, and unless you have a really good team who can push back the defenders, the attack side isn't going through that without difficulty. There is no balance there, and it sometimes feels like a losing game, especially if you have tanks who are too scared to push up and create the space that you need. It's also very much discourages flyers like Angela or Iron Man because there's no way for you to flank around the map. I do have to say that the map is absolutely gorgeous, and there are so many tiny little details in it that just absolutely shocked me. Outside of that first point, I really have no complaints with the map. It's probably one of those moments where one tiny detail ruins the bigger picture. But seriously, man, fuck Clintar. Let's get some new thematic maps. I think the last point I want to make about the map is that in Rivals, there's a competitive map pool. Given that the game only came out a year ago, the game doesn't have a ton of maps. Granted, there is a decent size selection, but in my opinion, there aren't enough maps to warrant having a pool. If you take out the LTM modes and Resource Rumble, since that's a quick play original, there are only 13 maps in the game and only 11 are in competitive. That might not seem like a really big difference, but when you're playing the game for multiple hours a day or even half a day on the weekends, you start to really feel the lack of those two maps. Ignoring the fact that I'm going to be playing these maps at least 3 or 4 times every competitive session, I also end up playing at least one map back to back for my first 2 games, and then a little later down the line, I'm playing a different map twice in a row. Even with the option of having a map pool, I'm somehow getting the same map. I don't know what formula is used to determine what map you play on, but that needs to change because I really get tired of playing on that stupid fucking symbiote map every 20 seconds. Also unrelated, but I didn't want to make another section, please allow me to continue speaking in the voice chat through MVP. Sometimes I need to verbally assault the middle-aged man that's in my team, and I don't have enough time to do so after the game ends. I think if I'm going to be talking about maps, I have to talk about the game modes. I actually don't really have any issues with the game modes outside of the fact that they're all really derivative of Overwatch modes, and I really wish they did something unique. The issue is that the one time they did something unique, it was the worst game mode they ever released. I'm talking about Resource Rumble. Setting aside the fact that this is another symbiote map, Clintar, Throne of Null, this mode is extremely boring and not at all engaging. I actually don't know if anyone knows how Resource Rumble as a game mode works, so I'm going to explain it real quick. This isn't just for you, it's also for me. From my understanding, this game mode is basically King of the Hill, except it's not one person fighting everyone else, instead it's 2 teams fighting over a point. And instead of fighting over the last person standing, you're killing each other over random resources that are not explained in the slightest. This game has 3 stages. On the map, there's 3 different control points, but the first 2 are the resource zones. Each of these zones has up to 210 resources that a team can collect. While you are holding a point uncontested, you gain resources. But the second an enemy steps on the zone, it stops. Once a zone's resources are fully extracted, then the game mode moves on to the next point. The goal is to get as close to, or even, 360 total resources. That's the number you need to win the game, I think. Although a lot of teams don't manage to get the 360 before the 3rd stage. The 3rd stage, also known as the hijacked round, only happens if both teams hit a certain threshold in the first 2 phases. Specifically, both teams need to reach about 61 points. When this phase starts, both teams lose 60 points, and the total resource pool becomes 300. This hijack zone allows teams to fight and steal each other's resources from their opponent's pool. The longer a team holds the point, the faster they steal, and this goes on until one team reaches 300 resources and wins the game. If that didn't make any sense to you, you're not alone. I genuinely had no idea how the fuck this mode worked for so long. I didn't know that you didn't have to go into the 3rd phase if you just won all the resources in the first 2. From what I've gathered, the goal was to add this mode into competitive in the future. I don't know if I'm going to be the first, but I'm probably going to be the most adamant person to saying that we do not want this! We do not want this! If I had the option to remove this from the game pool entirely, I would. I fucking hate this mode, and as someone who has a very decent dislike for basically every game mode in this game, that's saying a lot. The bar is already in hell, and yet the devil is doing the fucking limbo. I genuinely don't know how they made a game mode so absolutely horrible and boring to play, but also with the map that is just absolutely awful to play on. Ignoring the fact that it's a symbiote map, there's nothing redeeming about the map. If we were here to talk about the map itself, it's nothing to really write home about. I feel like there were a bunch of different environments that not only would work to make more sense in terms of lore, but would also just be better suited for the mode. This is my polite way of saying that I hate every symbiote map, and no matter how many times I say that, it's not enough. There is also a bunch of randomly placed pillars of the goo that don't make sense being where they are. Not to mention the fact that the vantage points are so weird and poorly designed, although that one might just be a skill issue on my end. Actually, no, it's not. I'm the GOAT, and I refuse to believe that every teammate I've ever simultaneously had does not know how to position on that map. But long-range lines of sight don't really exist outside of initial choke points, and sometimes positioning yourself on the map is really awkward, especially as a strategist. It also just looks really bland, and I don't like looking at it at all. It's ugly, and seeing 3 different maps with the same boring color palette really sucks the joy out of my testicles. I want whimsy and joy, and Null is clearly not a whimsical and joyful creature. Here he is with his boring gray and red color palette looking like your average emo MLP OC in 2012. Get this man some swatches, stat! I feel like another thing is that the map is really long. If you've noticed, there are areas in the map where you have these boosts that allow you to get from one point to the next quickly. The reason why you need those is because the map is so long that it actually takes you a while to go from one point to the other. I don't know why it is so rectangular, even though I know they need to fit 3 points equidistant from the spawn areas on the same map, but I feel like that's just overkill. Having a map that long feels like you're not only underutilizing the massive amount of space you have by trying to fill it with long pathways and structures, but it takes a lot of the immersion and just ruins it, and also makes those travel segments pretty boring and uneventful. I know they are only going to make these areas between points, but I don't feel like having the downtime after a team fight, only to spend more of that downtime going to the next point, where we'll have a team fight and then a little bit of downtime to do the exact same thing. Overall, the map is horrible, and the game mode is just boring and very hard to understand. Everything feels like shit, especially when playing it, and I always feel like whenever I get there, my team is set to lose. And if we're not, I choose to lose the game anyways because I don't want to be there. Please, get rid of it. I honestly wasn't going to add anything on this part, but I genuinely think we need to just have a brief conversation about Lord Icons. The thing about Lord Icons is that they are extremely cool, showing that you have a lot of time put into a character, etc., etc. To me personally, it doesn't really mean anything outside of you playing that character for a very long time, and that kind of upsets me. I think that Lord Icons being something you can gain through playtime via actual achievements is something that would be a lot cooler instead of the boring, I played this character for 10 years. Anyone can get a Lord Icon, and it kind of makes it feel like there isn't much going into it. I remember having people on my team a few seasons ago who would flex that they had multiple Lord Icons when all that meant is that they didn't have a job. It doesn't feel like there's anything to it outside of dedication to a character. But the big thing about it is the fact that, in my opinion, some of the Lord Icons are not that great looking. We did get one with Human Torch that was absolutely abysmal, and luckily they changed it into something better. However, I feel like Gambit got the exact same treatment Torch originally did, except they are not changing it. Now, I know that when you click on the image, he gets a totally better version of it with him holding out his cards, etc., and blah blah blah. But the fact of the matter is that when you actually lock him in, he's literally just mogging you the whole time, and there's nothing really changed about it from his original image. Blade gets a part of his sword covering his face, so why can't Gambit get those cards covering his face or give him a totally different, icon than his base icon? Allegedly, I have a mod that changed Gambit's Lord icon to something else, which makes it at least 100 times better. Allegedly. Theoretically, even. But I think the fact of all of these people can come up with better Lord icons for the character means that something is wrong with the icon. And when you learn that these Lord icons and derivative from intro animations and BP animations, or even their image on the proficiency page, I feel like it completely takes away from how cool the icons are. Rogue is in a similar boat, and although I love her so much, she's my favorite Marvel character of all time, I'm gonna give it a pass. But they literally just turned her head a little bit and added some yellow geometry for her abilities, so I feel like they were kind of lacking there. It does look good, but it's not really different from her base icon. And for the love of God, please consider changing Groot's icon. That is the ugliest thing I've seen in my fucking life. I don't know why he looks like I sucked the fucking blood out of his dick, but bro looks like he hasn't gotten water in years. He looks like he's bound to a wheelchair asking about chocolate. And please consider pulling an Overwatch and putting the skins on the icons, both normal and Lord. Please. Another thing I want to quickly talk about is who gets what cosmetics. In my honest opinion, I'm a little upset that the same 4 characters keep getting the same cosmetics. Luna, Sue, Jeff, and Psylocke keep getting skins over and over, while characters like the Hulk, Cap, Black Panther, and even Bucky are lacking. Although Bucky has kind of been building his way back up, so. I probably would have included Ultron on the list, but I think he's been done too much of a disservice, so I genuinely can't put him in here without adding a whole other category dedicated to my man. We just gotta get him another skin or 2. Or 4. The Battle Pass was something that I originally was going to ignore because not only did I not want to add more to this video, but I also didn't really know how to say what I wanted to say. I think the one issue I have with the Battle Pass is how the rewards are gained. One of the really interesting things that is Instead of doing the things based on your XP, you complete different challenges to get the chrono tokens to unlock the page. Before, the system was different, but ever since they changed it, I haven't really been a huge fan. Granted, this is a personal preference and not one that I'm overly pissed about. I'm kind of missing the old one, especially because it meant that the more you played, the more carryover was when converting your chrono tokens to units. I get that they probably did this to be fair to the people who don't complete the battle pass, but I feel like there should just be enough missions that are given to the players so that way they can complete those missions and complete the battle pass if they have purchased it. I feel like I'm trying to even out the amount of chrono tokens and challenges people get is too difficult, and while it does give everybody a fair advantage, it doesn't really reward the people who play the game continuously over the other people who don't. And yeah, I don't want this to seem like it's unfair, but I feel like if you're playing the game for hours every day, you should be rewarded a little more than the people who don't. It's dedication and it's time out of your day. Just let the rewards continuously refresh if you're playing for longer. This isn't really a big deal though, I just wanted to mention my opinions on it. It's fine as is, and I wanted to nitpick the first point because the last one is a bit controversial and I wanted to soften the blow. The second issue I have has more to do with the cosmetics in the battle passes. The biggest thing I noticed about battle passes have been the themes. There was only one battle pass that really had a theme to it, and that was the symbiote battle pass in Season 3. The collection of skins were majority symbiote skins, while the other two that weren't related in the slightest. The skins overall were pretty cool, and I have to give credit where credit is due. I really like those skins, especially the rocket one. Zooey mama. My biggest issue is that the season after includes more skins that could have gone into the store or battle pass for that season, with that being Luna and Loki, and Phoenix if you want to count her as a Phoenix skin, which technically it is. I was honestly really glad to be the one to do the symbiote stuff and able to move forward, but Season 4 dropped the Fruit of Immortality battle pass, and I genuinely could not tell you the theme of that battle pass if I tried. Season 5 also has a really good battle pass in terms of skins. I think that most of them are crazy, and we got Magus for Adam Warlock, which is one of the sexiest skins I've wanted for ages, even though it uses his conquest suit for the comics, which is one that I wanted in the game. I can respect the fact that they use Magus variant, even if I wanted both. Now, be a deer and add a recolor, please. The only thing about the battle pass, though, was that I genuinely didn't understand the theme once again. The season revolves around Rogue and Gambit, where the two of them are part of the Grandmaster's scheme. I was so excited to have skins that revolved around the Grandmaster's shenanigans, but instead I feel like we've just got a bunch of filler skins. We also got a couple what-if skins, which I think would have been really cool as its own season. Picture this, a season based off of the alternate realities these characters are a part of, delving more into the lore, and we could have had skins from the show that literally delves into alternate realities. That would have been really cool, but instead we got a bunch of random skins that were shoved into one battle pass and given to us. I'm not a fan of it, and I just needed to say it because it's been bothering me for a little too long. I really hope that Season 6 has a definite theme of skins that we can enjoy. I miss the days of games where battle passes all had relevance to a certain theme, or at least to the other skins. The last thing I want to talk about is limited time cosmetics. Whew. This one will probably get me a lot of hate in comparison to everything else, but I want to really quickly explain my side of things before people come after and lynch me. I don't really like gatekeeping skins, because I think that everyone should have the ability to get certain skins if they want them. Making skins limited time is kind of cringe, but at the same time, I do understand it from a certain perspective. I think there's a difference between limited time cosmetics and battle passes. Battle passes are something that you can go through and unlock cosmetics during a set season, and when that season ends, you're done with the battle pass. I like that Rivals goes out of its way to say that as long as you purchase the battle pass, you can complete it during any season. That's super nice, and I don't actually know any other game that does that. But when they drop the battle pass later on in the game, during another season, it kind of upsets me. And I don't want to be one of those things where I don't want other people to get the cosmetics. That's not what it is. What it is to me is that when I played Season 0, I played the season. I was there since the beginning. It's probably the same for people who played the beta with the White Scarlet Witch skin. They have that because they played that during a game. I think that the battle passes should only be active and to be unlocked during the season that it's active. Sometimes people miss a season, and that sucks. I've probably been one of those people many times and upset by the fact that I missed some of those cosmetics. But at the same time, I felt really good being one of the few people with the Season 0 Battle Pass because it made me feel like I was there since the beginning. Now, all of a sudden, people who weren't there in the beginning have those same skins, and it kind of feels a bit fraudulent. Or as I like to say, stolen valor! Stolen valor! It's stolen valor! I'm also in the same boat about events. I think if there's an event going on, which usually one of the many battle passes, those cosmetics shouldn't be released in the store unless it's the free version, which you would pay money for. It just doesn't make sense to me for them to be released in a limited time event, and then release it again, or even into the store. Again, maybe the free stuff because that's something that everyone can just get by playing the game, but the stuff you actually have to pay for I don't think should be re-released. We haven't had that happen yet, but there's still time, and it was probably coming at some point. I don't want it to seem like I'm trying to induce FOMO, but I am really someone who likes nostalgia, and I think that having a cosmetic from the period they are from and not any later is really important. Again, I don't want this for any store cosmetics because I think those deserve to be brought whenever someone wants to. Maybe having a rotating market for more skins once more skins are released is probably a good idea to keep the store cleaner, more fresh, and just kind of clean up the game a little bit. But outside of that, I don't really care that much. Maybe I'm just not a fan of Stolen Valor, though. I don't know. I feel like by now it's probably a well-known fact that I am a strategist player. All of my lords are on supports, and the only one I don't have is Loki, although at the time of this video going up, I probably do have Loki lorded, but I have 2 tanks that are in the process of getting lorded, and I'm still working on some more DPS, but it's just taking 10 million years for those. Putting that aside, I'm very in tune with what the support community wants when it comes to buffs and nerfs. When Spider-Man was initially the masked menace he's supposed to be, I watched as the support community basically forced Guang Guang to take him out back and shoot him with a 12 gauge. When Season 5 dropped, I was actually surprised to see all the changes that were made. I absolutely love the quality of life changes that all the tanks got, even if I absolutely despise Groot even more with a passion. Penny now heals her teammates and gives them a speed boost, which, happens when they're on her webs, which seems inconsequential until it's not. Phoenix got a desperately needed change that now her damage fall-off isn't as great, and Mr. Fantastic is even tankier now, and that's not even everything. But one of the really big ones that came out was the Sue buffs, which gave her an extra damage, and now she's able to shield herself, which basically makes her the best support in the game. And I might be the first person to say this out loud that she did not need all those changes. Giving her the ability to shield herself was something that, while a lot of players wanted, she didn't necessarily need. Now she has a large amount of self-sustain that is easily accessible. It's basically throwing it if you don't have her on your team. And this is coming from a support player, by the way. C&D also got a buff to her health, which I don't know why she has whatsoever. That was entirely unnecessary. Why does she need 275 HP when she's already super easy to use and easy to survive on if you know what you're doing? Luna has always been a really big issue since her mobile invincibility ultimate used to be so fucking long, and the changes that were made to it to, take a few seconds off of it was alright. There was no consideration in changing the ability at all, but rather shortening it. It almost feels like it was a little slap on the face for the other players that the devs just said, we nerfed her. Happy? The ult is still super strong and powerful on its own, even after shaving off some of it. She also got another ability to self-heal outside of the 2 she already has, with that being her freeze and her clap. The whole moral of this is that I think support players get a little spoon-fed when it comes to anything about any of the characters. And by a little spoon-fed, I mean they absolutely just get everything they want. Sure, we got some quality of life changes that nerf supports, but outside of those, role is still extremely strong. I've probably ended up making a video comparing it to Overwatch support system because the way that these roles function are vastly different between the 2 games, but that's something for a later date. And even with all of these changes, we still live in a game where Adam Warlock, the character who can canonically fly, has 0 movement abilities and moves like a pregnant lady. The only buff they gave him in terms of movement was for after he dies. Why don't you guys pander to me? Give my boy a dash or something. Faster ult casting time. I don't fucking know. Also, please stop nerfing Ultron, I beg. I can't out-sustain half the roster. Please. 2 drones is not enough. Put him in a dress or something if that'll make y'all horny enough for him to not ruin his value even more than you already have. Now, I think this is the big thing that will probably be seen as an absolutely abysmal opinion from a boosted support player, but Daredevil is a fucking issue. I've never really had a problem with Black Panther and Spider-Man because I think that the difficulty, with the fast kill potential is a great trade-off for being able, to easily mess up on and being very difficult to play. Especially with the ability cooldowns on BP specifically. The characters don't have large health pools, and if you mess up a combo or miss an ability, you basically have to skip out on all of his kills and dip. But Daredevil, in my opinion, is a really big issue for a whole other variation of reasons. When I think of dive characters, the 4 that come to mind are Spider-Man, Iron Fist, Magic, and Black Panther. These were always the 4 horsemen of dive, and I always felt that they were pretty well balanced. I think the only exception was Iron Fist, but that's mainly because he has a whole different victim pool in the form of the Thing. But when Daredevil was added to the pool, I finally saw a glimpse of Satan himself. I didn't think Daredevil was going to be too bad, but I started seeing more and more about him. First, we look at his ridiculously large health pool, followed by the fact that he has block/reflect, followed by the fact that he has a free ability if he marks you, followed by the fact that he gets overhealth, and apparently he can transfer his disability to other people and blind them, which is absolutely insane, and I didn't know people could do that. Bro used to be a lawyer, dog. What happened? What happened to Matt Murdock? What did you do? I know me putting this after the part where I talk about support pandering is a little ironic. I don't want to be part of, I don't want this to be part of me coming off as a support player complaining. Because I am a flex player when it comes to competitive. Even as a tank player, he genuinely makes me miserable, and he's not even a tank buster. All of the things that I listed wouldn't be an issue if he didn't have such an impactful kit. The thing about Daredevil is that outside of him having an insane amount of damage that he could do, he also has an insane amount of survivability. If I was playing a character like Black Panther, it's very high risk, high reward situation where I would have to lay my spears, my dashes, and get out of dodge. I don't really get a ton of overhealth, and the only time I have a tiny passive is where I do a bit more damage with the more HP I lose, so I really do have to land all of my attacks. Spider-Man is a combo character, and with the amount of CC in the game, it practically makes him useless. Magic, like Spider-Man, is also in the same boat for having to rely on combos, except she doesn't have any options to get the hell out of dodge outside of a portal. And Iron Fist is Iron Fist, who simply is a tank buster more than anything else. All these characters have their own gimmicks and trade-offs, and that makes them extremely scary to go up against, but also very easy to counter and shut down. Daredevil doesn't have this. He has a lot of survivability, and on top of that, he has high kill potential. He kind of feels like a jack of all trades, and there isn't really anything you could do outside of burning all of his cooldowns, and even then you have to try and kill him, with him having a designated support shot up his ass, and that's even if you live long enough to do so. It basically requires you to turn all of your teammates' attention to one guy. The last thing I want to do is talk about streamer propaganda. This might be the most controversial of the three because the streamer community is very beloved in most cases, especially with streamers like Boger, Flats, Punch, and others of that caliber. But I'm going to keep it brief and just say the bare minimum since I think that, that'll get my point across. I've had a lot of people take in what streamers say to heart, and instead of forming their own opinions on a subject, they decide that the streamers are correct and everyone else is wrong. The best example is Black Panther. Originally, while people were learning how to play the character, BP wasn't actually a hard character to go up against. People didn't know his combos or exactly how he worked. Streamers wrote him off, saying that he wasn't good. But then, as people started to learn him and, play the character, streamers started saying that he was an instant ban, making him the most banned hero in certain seasons. Streamers who make their tier lists also throw certain characters in certain tiers, and people will also take that as fact. I've had a lot of people throw my own games because I went Jeff in the earlier seasons, even though I was absolutely goated on the character and could often carry games. They designated Rocket a killbot, which I was able to shred frontline tanks because I had a literal minigun strapped to my chest. Angela was bad, but I've seen really good Angelas be able to pull off crazy moves in games because they were on Angela. My biggest takeaway from this is that I really hope people start making their own opinions on characters. Just because a big streamer says that a character is bad doesn't mean that it's a throw pick. Some people might prefer one hero over another, and personal experience might make them more, value certain characters over others. But your opinions on characters are going to be different from other people's opinions, and it's up to both parties to respect each other's opinions and let them play the game, even if someone's playing a character you might not think of as good as another. And remember, just because a streamer says something is the meta doesn't mean you have to play the meta. Play who you want to play, like who you want to like, but respect that others are going to do the same. And for the love of God, just mind your own business. Season 5, and along with its anniversary event, came out in 2 different waves that were both absolutely incredible. The first phase gave out a bunch of free limited time credits that could be used to purchase cosmetics, while the second phase released a Psylocke skin and 2 small cosmetics from Times Squares, 200 free units, and a Rivals Day 2025 title. I've been really satisfied with the way that the event has gone, but I don't think everyone shares that same sentiment. People have been complaining about the Psylocke skin and the system used to unlock it. In the event, you can pay units to pop 1 of 6 balloons, each containing a part of the bundle. Each balloon pop costs more than the previous, with the first being 100. You can keep popping these balloons until you get the skin, and when you get the skin, you receive the rest of the bundle for free. For example, if you pop 1 balloon before getting the skin, with that being your second balloon, then you'd get the rest of the remaining 4 items for free. If you popped 5 balloons and then got the skin on the last one, you would pay the 4 price, which is $2,400. People had a lot to say about this, and a lot of it was complaining, which actually surprised me. So my rant on this specific part of the game does not have to do with the system in place, but rather the players. What a plot twist. Let's just talk about NetEase as a company for a second. If you know nothing about the company, NetEase is a major Chinese internet and video game company founded in June of 1997. Its initial internet services eventually expanded into a diverse range of online activities, which include PC and mobile games, email, advertising, e-commerce, online music, and other services. Its game division, referred to as NetEase Games, is one of China's largest game publishers. NetEase is also responsible for the production of an absolute banger of a battle royale known as Naraka Blade Point, which is also my other experience with NetEase games, and this is like my only other NetEase game I've ever played, so it's the only one I can use here for an example. Why I bring up Naraka is because in the game, there are a lot of in-game gacha opportunities ranging from small to big. You have certain chests that you can open similar to Apex packs that give you random items from a select list. There are also other small gacha games that can be used to purchase cosmetics, which worked in a similar way to the Psylocke one. The one big difference is that you can actually unlock the same item multiple times, meaning you have to spend more money if you run out of chests so that way you can unlock new cosmetics. NetEase has a history of this type of stuff, and the fact that it took Rivals this long to do it is surprising. I'm just shocked that it's one hell of a lot cheaper than this game in comparison to others. So, keeping all of this in mind, I really want to bring a very fundamentally basic rant to the table. Basically, what I'm hearing is that people decided to gamble, lost all their money because they went gambling, and are complaining that they had to gamble. I'm going to say this as many times as I need to. You are not obligated to gamble for the skin. Galacta did not hold a gun to your head and say, spend money on the game or else I'm going to blow your brains out, and not in the sexy way. You had full autonomy over your decisions and could choose to simply not try to unlock the skin. But greed is one of the 7 sins of the Bible, and every person who plays this game has it. Something that really came to my attention throughout the time playing this game is that the game went from being overly fun and engaging and such a great break from the monotonous Overwatch grind was that becoming the Overwatch monotonous grind. Outside of the cast of characters that I know and love from the comics, the really big thing that got me into Marvel Rivals over all the other Marvel games to date is the fact that it was so similar to Overwatch, but also vastly different. There were a few mechanics and characters' abilities that did give me Overwatch vibes, but it wasn't copy-pasted in a way that made me think it was a knockoff. Rather, I saw the care that went into developing the game, and I could see that the developers cared for these characters and the story just as much as I wanted to. When I say that Rivals got boring, I think the big thing is that it got repetitive. Playing this game for 5 straight seasons, including Season 0 actually, I've been a part of all the big ups and downs for each season. I was there for the nerfs and buffs that characters got, the new maps and modes. I was there for all of the events and the introduction of ideas that might not have been completely thought out. So I like to think that I have a very good understanding of the game. One of the really big things that drew me to the game was not only the art style of the characters and the maps, which was vastly different from Overwatch's simple 3D models, but I also really enjoyed the flashiness of the game. It was different from the usual CSGO and Valorant that I play, with flashbangs and quirky abilities that I still don't understand made it into the game, but Rivals still had my attention with pillars that shoot out from the ground and octopi that hung off the walls and shot green come at you. Visually, there's always a lot going on, especially with the hypermobile heroes that you have to keep track of and the impressive-looking abilities that add extra clutter to your screen. At first, I thought this was absolutely amazing, but over time, this exciting flashiness turned into a very bad flashiness. The game no longer held that initial release pizzazz, and instead all of the flashiness from the abilities went from being cool visual experience to me not knowing what the hell is going on, and I would have been playing this game for a long time. You would think by now I would understand that there is an Amor ult on the ground, but his old voice line paired with the very hard to see red lines make for some very, very unfortunate moments. One thing that Overwatch has always done really well is the ability to keep the visual clutter very small. The maps have always been this very bland landscape, but that bland landscape allows me to see different things that weren't there before. It's very easy for me to see the border of a Ramattra ult because it's purple and full of, fun particle stuff, which is a color that isn't really popular on any specific map. There's also not a lot of clutter in terms of the maps, which leaves a lot of areas players to roam around on and not get stuck on. Rivals has this way of taking this very bright game and making it very blue and red, if that makes sense. And that's solely from a visual perspective. That's not talking about the rest of everything. The bright colors and immersive looking abilities really were what drew me into the game. I like that I got to see pillars of fire from the Phoenix, a magnetic projectile from the Master of Magnetism, or even a flash of red from the Masked Menace himself. But eventually, having your ability after ability after ability flash across your screen, you eventually start to lose what is there. After the 4th time you fail to see a Namor ult because there's 27 abilities on the ground, it gets pretty annoying. I think a really big thing that people have always compared Rivals to with Overwatch was the characters. We had a few characters with abilities that were akin to some from Overwatch, and a lot of people saw this and thought that in a way it was a cheap knockoff. Hell, I've had sometimes thought the same thing, with the characters being cheap knockoffs instead of being ripped straight from the comic material. After a while, you kind of realize it's the same thing over and over, and it wasn't as fun to play with those characters. I hop on Rivals to get away from the characters of Overwatch, and sometimes I feel like they're there, just in a different body. I think a very good example, and probably the most common example of this, is Widowmaker and Black Widow. I feel like I don't have to explain the fact that they both have Widow in their name, and they're both snipers. The only difference is that the Venom Mine versus the Stun Kick, and the fact that one sniper turns into a shitty SMG while the other is basically a pump-action shotgun. For a lot of people, this character felt cut up and pasted from one game to the other, and I do get that. I feel like I'm not explaining this point very well, but I think I've done as well as I could given the fact that I also really don't know how I'm explaining it in my head to myself, but it makes sense in my mind, so, deal with it? I don't know. Visual clutter and similar characters aside, the environment oftentimes can appear to be more on the tedious side. I know we went over the maps and everything earlier, so I won't really touch upon certain aspects, but the symbiote stuff, as well as the reconstructing terrain, went from being a really cool idea to a mechanic that has me punching my monitor. The game was fresh for a long time, and that's something that I'm forever thankful for. Playing the same games over and over was a hassle, and I didn't really help to cure my boredom. Rivals was a great break from the status quo of the games that we had, but at the same time, it eventually fell into that pattern. Maybe it's the similarities from similar games, but I think that over time, it lost the magic touch that I was hoping it would retain for a little while longer. That's not to say that I don't still enjoy the game. I still think it's better than Overwatch, but at the same time, I think that there's a lot of changes and improvements that can be made to bring back the fun-paced visual experience that this game originally offered. This game had the potential to be great, and actually succeeded in being the best version of itself. However, I think that it could be better, but I think that's going to take time and a hell of a lot of effort to take what's there and polish it to a degree unseen before. But if anyone could do it, I know this game is the one. I believe in you, Rivals, and I really hope that some of these things that I've bitched about during this whole video are taken into consideration, even if it's just passing conversation. You've had the potential to be great, and you came great. Now, you have the potential to be better, so let's be better. I say all of this, and now watch as I continue to dump another 400 hours into this game. And that's really all I have for you today in this video. I feel like I've been praising this game a lot for the things it's been doing right, and the dislikes portion of those videos have always been a lot smaller in comparison to the rest. However, with the amount of issues I've been having with the game, I just needed an uninterrupted slot where I could vent my frustrations and just get this out in the open. I feel like I need to say that this isn't me shitting on the game in its entirety. I still have way too many hours logged into this game for the year, and it's been out, which, if you really put that into retrospect, even puts my Apex hours to shame, and that's a lot of time I shouldn't have on the game. Rivals is still an absolutely tremendous game, and I think that it can really only go up from here for a lot of these things. This game is pure potential, and if it means I don't ever have to open Overwatch again, I will gladly play this until the day I die. Let's just not go into making any more stupid balance changes, or I'll have to go back to Overwatch for a bit. Hopefully, if everything goes the way that I want it to go, I'll start adding a lot more of what I wanted to make on this channel, that being fun and gaming moments in the works. I'm still trying to— my chilies! No! Oh, okay, it's fine. It's fine. Oh, it's fine. Anyways. Hopefully, if everything goes the way that I want to go, I'll start adding a lot more of what I've wanted to make on this channel, that being fun and gaming moments and the works. I'm still trying to find a recording group that's willing to do this with me, which is pretty hard to find and also get along with, not to mention the scheduling nightmare that comes with the time zones and real jobs, which, yes, I have. But, hey, I could pray. Maybe one day I'll find the perfect group. However, today is not that day. Here's to expanding our social circles! That card I mentioned earlier should be on screen now. Anyways, this has been Schlorpa, and I'm gonna go play Rogue with one hand. There's no way no one's gonna notice I put jiggle physics on. There's no way, like, look at that. Cake. Cake is so much cake. There's no reality. They don't know. I can't stop moving. I have to keep moving. I just pray no one notices.